How to ace .NET Architect interview in 2019. Hello friends, my name is Vikas Kirni. I have more than 20 years experience in IT industry. My most of the experience is on C#, SQL Server and Angular and other JavaScript frameworks. So I interview a lot of candidates in some of my companies, and at the same time uh, I have worked in few companies, so I get interviewed a lot. So today I want to share how to ace .NET Architect interview 2019. It was a very interesting interview. So we'll go from the full stack. First question, start from the stored procedure. Tell me which one you will use, stored procedure versus parameterized queries, and whose performance is better, parameterized queries or stored procedure, and what is the difference between cluster index and non-cluster index. So between stored procedures and parameterized queries, stored procedures used to be a good practice. Now it's a questionable practice. When you are doing stored procedure, there are a lot of you have to maintain the source control. There's a lot of cost also. So parameterized queries have already execution plan compiled. So cluster index is the index where how the table is organized according to the cluster. It is the fastest. You can have only one cluster index. Was there a scenario where your cluster index was different than primary key? Definitely. Have you used cross join, row number, or any other SQL Server keyword in your queries? The candidate is looking your breadth of your T-SQL knowledge here. So if you use some advanced T-SQL keywords, here you can tell him. How do you use query analyzer? Here he is looking your knowledge of how you can interpret the query analyzer or profile results. One common thing is you are expecting index to be used and it's not being used. Instead there's a full table scan. So you see why using this query analyzer you find out why that's happening. So this is another very advanced questions. It was something on the line, the reads are high and the query performance is low. What you do? It means the server has less memory. The memory need to be increased. And next one is more interesting. In SQL Server, reads were low, but the SQL performance is very low. What's happening here? Generally, it means that something is blocking. Some query has blocked the whole SQL Server. Object relational mapper. Have you used object relational mapper? The question could be asked. Have you generally object relation mapper? You generate the data. You can generate classes. Actually, the first question is very common. Is there are two approaches: a database approach or code first. Database approach is you design the database first and then you generate your entity classes from the database. Whereas in code first you design the domain layer first and then you design your database. Generally code first is considered very good practice there where it's about clean architecture. Generally you in clean architecture you are finding your domain logic first. Domain logic is generally 10% of the overall application, but it is very important. It decides whether your project is gonna be success or fail. Have you customized the generation of entity framework? Here he is looking the depth of your knowledge. Generally my domain classes are different and entity classes are different. So next come to caching. Have you used any third-party framework for caching? There are third-party framework like Ncache. Then Microsoft Azure used to Microsoft Azure Fabric, Microsoft Fabric used to be there, and then they moved. Now I think cloud, in the cloud also you have some Azure Fabric caching services. So what are the stuff is good for caching? How you decide this is the stuff you're gonna put in the caching? So caching is like you want to put some stuff which user is using over and over. At the same time, you don't want to put million of records in the cache, and forcing cache to be clean, recreated. If cache is getting a lot of stress. Did you have any page in your project where 10 asynchronous calls were being made? If yes, were there any session locking? How did you resolve the session locking? Most of the pages, this is one way of improving the performance of your page, making sure each your page has multiple components and they are loading by themselves. Microservices. This is very commonly asked question. Have you used microservice API gateway? I have a video on API gateway. Microservices API gateway is a way to shield the client from intricacies of microservices. One may be using multiple microservices to get some accomplished work accomplished. Maybe the payroll application may be using employee microservice, then payslip calculation microservice. So for a client application, it just uses how generate payslip. So backends for front end is also common pattern. I have a video for that also. I'll put the link down. So there are a lot of questions being asked about microservices, and WCF, Windows Communication Foundation. Some of the legacy applications may be using. So have you used WCF? Have you written some custom transports for your WCF? Here the person is finding out how much in-depth knowledge you have. So next come the JavaScript category. The questions are being asked: which JavaScript frameworks are you using? Which JavaScript framework do you like? One question was asked: do you like Angular JS? I said yes, I do like Angular JS. Before Angular JS, you have to use so many frameworks for binding. You have to use one framework. For template, you have to use another framework. So Angular for MVC, you have to use another framework. So you have to use so much framework. Angular JS solved the problem by using only one framework. Did you do any responsive design? So here you can tell if you have used any JavaScript framework. So another question is another question: do you like Angular JS? And then there could be a CSS basic question. Maybe here the question I took a pass on the CSS question. So here he's finding out how much CSS knowledge you have. So he may ask a question where you are styling based on the boxing and margins. He want to make sure you are not using table. That's old way of using CSS. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you like it, share it, and subscribe to this channel for your regular updates.